classic storytelling techniques, 8 classic storytelling techniques, Suzanne Williams.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. It's true, I have been on a quest for many years on how to tell a good story. Because telling a story might seem simple, but it can be tricky. Because when you tell a story, you want to take people on a journey. You want them to be engaged in everything you say from the moment you start until the moment you end. And so I am here to tell you tonight with this handout what I have found. It is called 8 Classic Story Techniques for Engaging Presentations. Whoopsie daisy, and I have never seen that before. I found it on the web. And I'm going to have, what is good about this is that it has a formula and a picture. So after I get through tonight with these 4 techniques, it's not going to be hard for you to remember them because you're going to remember that picture, and that picture is going to help you recall everything that we are going to go over tonight. The first one on page 1 is called the monomyth. And the monomyth is a hero's journey. It's a story structure that's found in fairy tales, in myths, in religious writings from all around the world. It's when you can see the picture of this little tiny lion, and he's leaving home, he's going on a journey, and he's going to learn new things, and he's going to be so well versed and excited and growing that he's going to come back to the place he started, and he's going to share everything he's learned about where he's been. This is very popular, and I can give you 2 stories you know of that are the monomyth. It's the Lion King and Star Wars. So there you go. And when you go do the monomyth, you're taking the audience on a journey, you're showing them the benefit of taking risks, and you're demonstrating how you learn some newfound wisdom. That is one of the easier ones. Then if you go to the mountain, this is one that is similar to the monomyth, except what if things don't go right? Things can go wrong. And so after I go through this, I'm going to go back and give you an example of the mountain. It's like a TV series. Each episode has its ups and downs, all building up to a big finale at the end of the season. It's good for showing how you overcame a series of challenges, slowly builds tension, and delivers a satisfying conclusion. The next one is nestled loops. Nestled loops is used where you layer 3 or more narratives within each other. You place your most important story, the core of your message, in the center, and use stories around it to elaborate or explain that central principle. The first story you begin is the last story you finish. The second story you start is the second to the last. And nestled loops works a bit like a friend telling you about a wise person in their life, someone who taught them an important lesson. The first loops are your friend's story, the second loops are the wise person's story, and the center is an important story. It's good for explaining the process of how you were inspired, came to conclusion. It uses analogies to explain a central concept and shows how a piece of wisdom was passed along to you. The last one is spark lines. Spark lines is a way of mapping presentation structures. The best speeches succeed because they contrast our ordinary world with an ideal, improved world. They compare what is with what could be. And Martin Luther King gives that famous speech, I have a dream. He talks about how the world is and how it would be better in a better world. And he goes back over that with different examples. And so that is your spark line speech. It creates hope and excitement, and it creates a following. That is just a quick overlook of the 4 story techniques of these 8. And you can, what I did was, these are not my ideas. I put the name of the person who has these ideas, and you go on our website and watch videos that explain in detail exactly how to tell a good story according to one of these 8 techniques. I'm going to go give an example of the mountain. It's like an inner strength resilience talk. And I'm going to talk about challenges. What I did was I went to the dictionary to find out what is a challenge. A challenge is a difficult job, something that you need a great mental and physical effort in order to be done successfully, or the situation facing that kind of effort. So it takes a lot of strength to overcome a challenge in your life, and we all have challenges in our lives. So I'm going to go through 3 of my life-changing challenges that I've had. When I was, and I'm starting with a story. When I was 6 years old, I was at Brownie Day Camp. And my troop had this area on this little hill, and we could see half the camp, which included a road that came into camp. And while I was playing with my friends, I looked out the side and I saw this police car pass our area and go and continue on into another troop's area. And I didn't think too much about it, but it was a day that was going to change my life forever. Because when I got home in the evening, who was there but the policeman, the Episcopal minister in town, and my Aunt Irene. My mother was at the hospital because my father had had a stroke, and his left side was completely paralyzed. It wasn't too bad in that he got use of his legs and hands, but he always wore a patch over his eye the rest of his life. So at 6 years old, my mother had to get a job because in my world, men had jobs, women were homemakers, and you could keep your front door unlocked. My mother told me that I had to start helping around the house then, and that was pretty tough for me. I had to keep the living room picked up because we were going to have a lot of guests come in and out to visit us. I had to make the bed, I had to make my own breakfast, and I had to just be a good girl. I had to slow down. I had to think of other people and forget myself, because now I had to help her take care of Dad. It was okay at the beginning, and I learned how to be thoughtful. I learned, which was very hard for me because I was very into myself. I was a selfish little kid. But I learned how to, that was my journey on how to become a person who didn't think of myself. Then my life stayed like that from the time I was 6 till I was 14, and then my mother told me that she decided I needed to go to boarding school because this was no life for a child, not to have any children, any kids my own age to play with, because adults were in my life. Adults were always giving me advice, and I thought that, I didn't mind it because I learned to like adults. But then I went to this boarding school, and my mother and I thought it was going to be lots of fun, and my mother and my father drove me onto this beautiful campus overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And this campus had an airplane strip for small airplanes. It had tennis courts. It was a lovely place. It even had gunning mounts, in case there was going to be a war, and our school got this 600 acres for $1 if they spent $1 million in 3 years or 10 years. So anyway, I had a gorgeous place to go to school, but they put me in the room. My roommate was Laura Lee, who was the prima donna of the school. She was this woman, a girl who could sing. She could sing better than anybody I had ever heard, and she would have the wire backing her up. She would just be really, really lovely. And everybody made sure that they gave her a lot of attention. They didn't give me that much attention. And then I went, so I learned how to get along with all those kids. They were a rowdy bunch, and I was not used to rowdy kids. And my life changed because I had to go to that school. And life moved on. And I went to another boarding college. And after that, I got married, had kids, and then I went to a meeting. And at this meeting, there was this woman who was a keynote speaker named Florence. And I really liked Florence. I had to see her again. And so she offered this class for leaders and speakers. And so I decided I would go to that class. And I didn't even want to be a leader or a speaker, but I wanted to be around Florence. And there were a lot of women there. And I tried to stay in the background, which I did. But then later on, Florence had an advanced class. So I thought, yay, I'm going to go to that advanced class, but I'm going to stay in the background. But there weren't that many women in that class, just a few of us. And at the end of the week, at that class, she all went out to dinner. And I said to myself, if Florence pays for my dinner, I am going to keep on with this speaking business. And, midway through the meal, she leaned over and she said to me, I'm going to pay for your dinner, Suzanne. Well, time went by, and I ended up giving book reviews in front of women, for like 1,000 women. I did this for 6 years, and then I went on, I did some more leadership, and I invited Florence to come up to my retreat and give a talk, and she came several times. And I'll never forget the day when I was in the back of the room with Florence while all this singing was going on. She took me aside and she said, Suzanne, I have been watching you, and I've noticed that when you get up and speak, you try to be somebody else. You don't let people know who you are. And when you do that, people are not going to believe what you have to say. You really become a fake person. So I want you to stop that, and I want you to start being who you were made to be. And when she got through giving me her little lecture, I was just so happy. Someone had given me permission to be myself, because all through those years, I was taught to think of others first, but now I could think of myself first. Florence and I became friends, and she helped me through the years, and she's mentored me, and these were the three events in my life that changed my life. And it was not easy. It was hard. When I was the child, I was forced to be good, and I really didn't want to. Then I had to go to the school, and I had to get along with all these kids who I really particularly didn't like, but I learned to have friends. Now they're my friends, some of them. And then I learned I met Florence, and she told me to just be myself, so I don't worry about trying to please other people anymore. And you get inner strength from adults. And I had too many adults in my life, so I guess they gave me inner strength, and that's how I've made it to where I am today. And I'm really not very weak at all. So that's me.